Damos inicio con el panel número 1, llenando las expectativas de los clientes internacionales. ¿Qué esperan las marcas de El Salvador? A medida que nos preparamos para afrontar nuevos retos en el mercado de los Estados Unidos, es importante comprender el punto de vista de las marcas y compradores respecto a las tendencias de suministro actual y a la importancia de la región de CAFTA y las mejoras que deben hacerse por parte de la industria y los gobiernos, con el fin para seguir siendo relevantes y competitivos. Nos acompaña en este panel Randy Howard, VP de Materials de Under Armour, Bob Lloyd de Puma Group, director de Manufactura Latinoamérica, y Colin Israel, consultor y ex-VP de Black Diamond Asia. Como moderador nos acompaña Walter Wilhelm, consultor internacional con más de 30 años de experiencia. Podrán consultar la biografía de todos nuestros panelistas y moderadores en el documento oficial del evento.
How do I get the presentation up? Yeah, that's good.
Next.
Just the plus.
Pointer.
Okay, and this one looks okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you for being here. I think I know many of the people in the audience. I've worked with quite a few companies here, and it's such a pleasure to be in El Salvador, but it's especially nice to see this audience. It's an amazing group that you've assembled here. It shows the interest that you have in the industry and its success. I was very pleased to have the speakers that introduced the topic, including your Minister of the Economy. As most of you know, I have firmly believed that an industry cannot be successful without having the total support from the factory owners, from the labor that makes the product, but also from the government. And without that support, it's really a challenge to be successful. So I was very pleased to listen to the presentations this morning. Next, we're not going to talk philosophically very much. We're going to talk about what's the real world. What are you facing? What are the challenges? How do you compete in the marketplace going forward? And especially what are today's topic, this first one, is what are the companies, the brands and the retailers that you're out there trying to attract to your area, what are they looking for? And has it changed from what it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago? And so what I tried to do is I tried to attract a panel that could effectively address that issue. One of the speakers, the first one I'm going to call on when we do this is Randy Harwood. And I've known Randy for many years. He was with Patagonia for many years, and they were a client, and I worked with Randy there. Randy's also one of the big thinkers in the industry, and he introduced me to lots of new concepts and things like that. Now, you'll enjoy Randy for those of you that haven't met him. He's now Vice President of Material at Under Armour. And so his experience in the industry has just been phenomenal, and it bridges over both the product, the apparel that they make, also their footwear, of course. But it also goes into the raw materials that make it up. And Randy's a real expert in this area and one of the gurus in the industry. Next, I'm going to have Colin Israel speak. And Colin's had a fascinating career. He was a consultant with Deloitte and Touche. He was the CIO of Volcom. He was But the main reason that I asked Colin to be on the panel is that he was the managing director of Black Diamond's operation in Asia. He was responsible for taking and building a production facility in Asia to make the Black Diamond high performance gear and clothing over there. And then shortly before he left Black Diamond, Colin was responsible for moving it back to this hemisphere, to moving it back to the United States. And everybody has heard about the companies that moved out, the ones that moved to Asia, to Bangladesh and to China and to Cambodia and to especially Vietnam. We've all heard about that. But it's only been recently that companies have started transitioning back to this hemisphere. So Colin's going to be on grilled this morning on why you would move over there, and then why would you move back? And how does that apply to your industries here? And finally, Bob Lloyd is going to speak from Puma. But Bob was with many years with Nike. And it takes a lot of tools for communication, and it's not I used to make my clothes. That's not that complicated, but it is complicated when you're dealing in the global market. Even though it's complicated, many of your companies have survived. The risk of that success is complacency. I know because I've visited some of your companies, and the senior management feels like, hey, if it's not broken, don't break it. Just let it go. But in doing that, if you're not changing, you're not going to be competitive in the future. You've got to be changing. And so we'll be talking throughout the day in some of the things that you need to do in order to change, and where does that stand? Finally, this conference is about that change that you need to make and how you continue to be competitive. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Randy. Randy's probably going to apologize a little bit for a video he's going to show you, because he didn't want to make a plug for Under Armour, but I said, hey, it's going to wake the people up, so do it. Randy, you're on.
Good morning. I am the only person in my family that is not bilingual, and I'm not proud of it. Let me get my little video going up here. I do want to apologize for the video, because it is brand, it is Under Armour. Come on. I need to stop. But that's not why I'm showing it. I'm showing it because it's a video, a portion of a video, 1 minute, and this video we use inside of Under Armour before big meetings to get us engaged, to wake us up in the morning. So I'm going to show you a little piece of Under Armour culture, but I want you to understand that for us and Puma and every other brand that you work with, This is the pace that we all work in, trying to compete in a very, very competitive market. It is a high, dramatic. That's a wake up. It's a dramatic environment, and we all have to really address it strongly. Are we ready, guys? Oh.
Listen up.
You cannot bet against UA.
Under Armour's a modern success story.
Today's Under Armour Day.
Put my Under Armour's on, be ready to go.
If this is,
That was nasty.
In the face of overwhelming odds, I'm left with only one option. I'm gonna have to science the out of this.
The new UA record.
Yes, science.
Times are changing, Betty. These nerds are a threat to our way of life.
We're doing all the things.
All of a sudden, small ain't so small.
We talked about slaying giants before. This ain't no more David and Goliath.
That was it. So this case, I think. Do we have it? Yep, it is. This pace is what we deal with every day. Every morning we come into work, and we have to develop product for all those customers that are clamoring for the best thing they can possibly get at every moment of every day. And it is a pace that you don't feel often when you're out in the what I call the sourcing world, our whole supply chain. It seems a lot slower and a lot more careful, and there's a lot of what would you say, just negotiation between partners on what a particular business opportunity might be. But I don't want you to forget that that customer, that athlete that we all serve, is actually what we're all trying to do, is try and make that person excited about the things that you're making, that we're making together. All of the opportunity that we have in the world to satisfy that customer continues to grow. There's no slowing of the demand for product when we hit the right market with the right, what I call the sweet spot, when we marry your capabilities and your technologies with our ideas and our market. It's a non-stop opportunity. It doesn't go down. And the world market exists. It is not a shrinking market, it's a growing market. It's dynamic, and it's not, what we look at is some of the, what we now call onshoring back to the US or to the Americas. There's good reasons for that. It's because the cost of living and the standard of living around the world is going up. So now we have world markets that also want that product. It's not just the American or the European customer. It's a world market that wants a similar product at similar price points. And that capacity around the world is actually difficult to obtain. So when I look at things like TPP, and I know that a lot of this conversation is about that, there's no way that can keep up with this demand. It will be an advantage to a few for a while if it happens. But it's not enough to satiate the size of the market that exists. And so what I like to do is work with partners such as yourself to marry your abilities and technologies with our market and try and make the cost portion of that equation irrelevant.
Thank you, Randy. I've worked with Randy, as I said, for many years, and I've also been at Under Armour and watched this type of video and watched the psychology that Kevin Plank gets in the organization to get everyone fired up and to reach their goals. At times, I felt like the goals are unrealistic, but damn, they achieve them. So it's just getting everybody on the same page and everybody working in that direction that is required. Colin, I'd like to invite you to speak for a minute and just kind of give a little bit of background on, especially on the background of why you moved over to China with Black Diamond, and then why you moved back. I think that's really fascinating.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for having me, and this is very humbling actually to be next to some really esteemed panelists. Black Diamond is a company that you may or may not have heard of, but our focus is on the outdoor industry, and we make the equipment and the clothing, the apparel, that helps people climb up mountains and then get back down them. And in many cases, those people are in very dangerous situations, and hopefully our equipment and our clothing protects those users. Randy said something, and it's a very important thing for us too, which is our customer, and enabling our customers and enabling our employees who also use the equipment to do the things they love. In probably 10 years ago, Black Diamond had all of their manufacturing for all of their hard goods in the US. And we decided to move everything over to China in a two-phased approach. Phase one was going to be moving the assembly over to China. Phase two was then going to be moving a lot of the raw material sourcing to China. About 3 years ago, life was good. Black Diamond is growing. It's a healthy economy. People like the outdoors. And about 2 years ago, we started to reassess our plan for China. And there started to be some headwinds that were approaching us. Number one was there was trust. The second problem we saw was that we had issues with labor year over year. We see 12% or 8 and 15%, depending on how you. And that was a real problem for us. We started with the margins were good. We were happy with that, but we were seeing that more and more headwinds were happening with respect to labor prices in China. The third thing that was a big issue for us as we were starting to look at our situation was the issue of the headwinds from changing government policy. So we really didn't feel in China like we knew what was coming next. Wasn't actually, China's actually defining a lot more, and in some ways it's getting a lot more transparent for businesses, but we were having a real hard time navigating that. That was a headwind that we had to deal with. The final headwind was more of a kind of a lean manufacturing value stream analysis, looking at the fact that we were transporting things over to China, raw materials, we were moving them from all over the place to Asia and to China, and then moving them back to sell them. So our markets were predominantly in Europe and the United States, not in Asia at the time, and we were really looking at that as another headwind. So we took all of these things together, looking at our strategy. We had 2 full manufacturing facilities, we had warehouse and distribution, we had a whole sourcing agency supporting all of our outsourced manufacturing in Asia, quality, supply chain, everything that goes with it. And we started to reassess our whole strategy, and we decided about 18 months ago to move all of our in-house manufacturing back to the US and to outsource, consolidate, direct ship, do other things with our warehousing and distribution logistics plan to basically reduce our footprint in Asia. So 18 months later, here we are. We've transitioned everything back. We've closed both of our factories. We've closed our warehouse and distribution center. So everything in China has pretty much been moved back to the US. It tells an interesting story, and I think Walter mentioned something that's really important, which is it's not broken right now, and it wasn't broken for us in China yet. But what we saw is we saw some things changing that were really, really important to recognize. Randy mentioned, the global economy. It's great from a consumer standpoint because the consumers there's a bigger middle class, and that's great. But the reality is labor is going up, and I think preparing for that is really important. Recognizing, the need for more high-skilled engineers, more automation and equipment. There's a lot of things that are going to be necessary to compete. And when I say that, I say for Central America to compete with the US. Because what we're finding, at least for Black Diamond, is it was actually the same price or cheaper for us to manufacture in the US than it was for us to manufacture in China. I think that's a really interesting paradigm, and that's something that's going to be really important to address.
Thank you, Colin. I think there's really valuable lessons from this, and there's not many opportunities that you have to actually speak with someone that has moved an operation offshore in order to take advantages of the cost and everything, and then moved it back because they changed. And I think it was especially brilliant for their management to be looking ahead like that. I'll tell you a little private story about early in my career. I was with one of the owners of a company called Microdynamics, and we were looking at different 3D applications and printing applications and things like that. And Stork invited me to visit their corporate headquarters in Europe. I went over there and met with them, and they told me they wanted to speak to me about digital printing. And I said, Stork was the largest in the printing industry. They're a major, very, very successful, very profitable company. Went over there and met with them, and I went through it. And I said, why in the world would you be looking at digital printing? You own the printing industry as far as roller prints. And they told me, they said, we don't want to wake up 2 years from now and find out that someone has gone out there and taken part of our business because they were thinking ahead of time and looking at new technology. We want to be the one that's looking at how to replace our existing technology. By the way, the shirt that I'm wearing today is digitally printed. It's digitally printed on cotton, not on synthetic. And that's something that just didn't exist a few years ago. I'd be curious as to how many people in this room have even done any digital printing. You've got to be doing things like that. So you've got to be ahead of it. Bob, I'd like for you to comment. It can be on your experiences in Puma, or you can on Nike, or just because you've had a really interesting career. Tell us about what you think. What are the companies looking for?
Sure. Just to draft off of, and again, I want to thank Camtex for having me up here with these guys. It is an honor. There's a lot of expertise in the room. You guys are the ones that are driving the business for the future. And so again, thank you to Walter also for moderating. Drafting off the sublimation and the digital printing, at Puma, I just spent about 10 days with my boss, who's based in Hong Kong, where our global sourcing is headquartered. We were down in Argentina, we were in Chile, and we finished in Mexico. She's been in El Salvador a couple of times and is coming back in May and June. And something that she is, and I'm amazed every time I walk into some suppliers here, is that investment in technology, that reinventing yourself. Rules change, everybody knows that. And to be successful in business, I'm going to coin an old phrase from a former company, you either adapt or you die. And that's a little bit harsh, but business is hard. And as rules change, we all have to adapt. Puma does, Under Armour does. I have to admit, Randy, I'm a little jealous of the video this morning, but I think that is sports analogies in business, I absolutely love. The stronger the competition, the better you are in business. Again, the investment in technology here, especially in sublimation, I think that El Salvador has really built itself as a sublimation hub, not just for the region, but for the globe. I was in Bangladesh in December, and one of the huge suppliers there was picking my brain for all of this sublimation. You know, what is TexOps doing? What is being done in Mexico? What is being done in Guatemala? What is being done in the region? Because they know that they are getting lapped by that investment in technology. You know, some things on a Puma specific scale, we've been lapped by our competition, some of the other big sports brands, and we are committed to grow our business in the CAFTA region by 2 or 3 times in the next 2 years. We have to. Again, if we don't do that, if we don't adapt to that, then we're not going to be out of business. But 3 of our top 10 markets in the world are the U.S., Mexico, and Argentina, believe it or not. Different beast down in South America. But we're trying to learn from what our local for local sourcing team has done in South Africa, in Argentina, and apply it to countries in Central America and in Mexico because it's a big local market for us. But you know, some things that I see, I think Minister Lopez mentioned training, investment in education, and investment in trade training. And I cannot emphasize that enough at the government and the industry level. It's one thing if, you know, 2 garment factories over here are investing in technology and training, and 4 factories over here and 3 factories over here. But it's got to be the businesses pushing the government to invest in the people and invest in the industry. So I was happy to hear him say that. Excuse me. Something that I actually thought of at the opening speech was we as business partners to the suppliers also need to welcome that expertise into our homes, so to speak. And last fall, one of our suppliers here, and this was purely by coincidence, one of our suppliers here had a niece who did an internship at Puma in Massachusetts. And I am going to talk to my team in Puma North America about doing maybe some sort of cross-training between merchandisers or merchandise managers at suppliers. Because I think that cross-knowledge, same thing, bring somebody here and stick them in a factory for 2 months. That cross-training and cross-knowledge is invaluable. I also think that there needs to be better cohesion between Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Yes, you're all in competition with each other, but hopefully what makes one boat rise makes all boats rise. CAFTA is in its, is it 10th year, 11th year? And I think that, certainly change is on the horizon. And like Randy was saying, everybody thinks TPP is going to be a game changer. And I'd like to see us as a group get ahead of that. I think there's a lot of skepticism about, the U.S. Congress getting anything done, period. But especially this year and maybe the next administration. But maybe I'll finish on a little bit of an acronym that I threw out. If we somehow came up with a Latin American free trade agreement that benefited everybody and really opened it up to true open competition, we could call it the Latin American Free Trade Agreement, or LAFTA, if we could. So anyway, that's all I got. Sorry.
Thank you, Bob. Quite fascinating, some of the points that he made. I love the idea of a company, a customer, being willing to cross-train or consider cross-training, sending some of their people to your factories and you sending some of your people to them. What a phenomenal concept, and building a better understanding of what's going on. I also like what Bob said about I think CAFTA has been an amazing thing. We heard some of the statistics this morning about how successful CAFTA has been. At the same time, I've been able to observe it. I've worked in every one of these countries in the CAFTA region, and I've seen that you don't compete as a region. You still compete as countries. And somehow in the next wave, what I'd like to see is more cooperation between your countries. Let's find a way. Let's make it happen. It's not impossible. And if we can find more cooperation around there, and where you are competing as a region, then you're going to be even more powerful than you have been. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to get it back to some kind of nitty-gritty. And I'd like for each of you to talk just briefly about if you're looking for something in a factory, when you're out looking for a source, are there things that are particularly important besides that it's got to be on time, it's got to be the right quality, and it's got to be inexpensive or cheap or whatever you want to use? Those 3 elements have existed since we first started sourcing. But is there anything new that is required in this area? Randy?
I'll prepare for that question by reminding all of us. If you look at the Industrial Revolution in the early 1900s, and the U.S. had become the low-cost manufacturer, low-cost automated, in fact, manufacturer for Europe. And that moved to 70 years later it lasted. And each of those cycles where everybody has gone to find lower cost, the cycle has gotten shorter. It went to Korea, went to Taiwan, went to China, sat in China for a while, a lot of capacity there. And now it's breaking out into other regions like Vietnam and the rest. There's a problem built into that, in that none of the rest of the sourcing world combined can now replace what got landed in China, because it was a massive supply. And so there's not an easy solution. And I'll reiterate, I don't think TPP is really that big a solution to that problem. Local for local manufacturing is going to grow in China. I know at Under Armour we look at our next big local for local initiative after we grow our business here in the Americas. Our goal, by the way, is to do 30%, fully 30% of all of our production here in the Americas. We're at 26% of all of our business now in the Americas, but it's a tiger to chase, because as that percentage grows, our business grows. So this year we're something like $4.5 billion. By the end of 2018, Under Armour will be somewhere between $7 and $8 billion. And so that 30% portion continues to get larger and larger and expand. It's very, very hard to keep up with. So do we need your help in your business? You bet we do. I have my team last year in materials had to come up with $1 billion in new material platforms to support Under Armour's growth. This year, we're in the middle of trying to find $1.5 billion in new material platforms to support that growth. Next year, it has to be $2.5 billion. So the opportunity is there. It's just figuring out how to use it. So will you say, what do we look for? We look for people who can help us with that problem. And that is, first and foremost, that I would say the trait that I look for first and foremost is a partner who's trying to understand my problem, first and foremost. They're not trying to take their business model and what they're currently doing and what they've invested in and the way they think they're going to move forward and try and apply it to my problem. They're actually trying to understand my problem. And the people that do that tend to be rare. And when you find them, you can begin to really see a sense that they begin changing some of their business practices and their capabilities to begin matching what they really see our needs to be. And that is probably the most significant thing that causes a partner to grow with us. They simply get what our problems are and are truly working with us to try and figure out how to solve those problems. Because the business exists, it's just a matter of a puzzle to figure out how to make it work. Because we want to do the business. We have to do the business to support our growth. How do we get it done? And it's the mismatch. Walter had a question. I hope I'm not jumping the gun in there. And often you hear senior executives, maybe like me, saying this is what we want to do. We want to have partnerships deep in the region. But then you have sourcing staff who are telling you something different. They need this at this extremely low price, and can you do it in this short period of time? And there's a big difference between those two stories. And that's true. But what you need to look at when you see that is, I believe what you're hearing from the upper executives of these companies is what they really want to do. And what you hear from the sourcing staff is where they are today. The difference between those two is your opportunity. It's just a matter of figuring out that bridge. And again, I'll say that the people who help us find the sweet spots where we're actually solving a customer's need, providing true ingenuity, true innovation, a real performance story, and an aesthetic one that is exciting within the market, then cost becomes less of an issue. It's really about us trying to figure out how to satisfy that need. When we've, with several of you in the audience, have hit those sweet spots, our problem isn't really about price. It's about capacity and can we keep up with the infrastructure to keep up with what the customer wants. That's what I'm always looking for, some partner who helps me find those sweet spots, and then all the other problems evaporate because we simply have a market we can't satisfy. That's the long answer to a short question.
Colin?
Well, thanks, Randy. You did a great job, and I don't know what else. No, no, I think there's a few things that we also look for. I think capacity is huge, and obviously, you know, being able to find a long-term partner. I guess the word that I would say is just sustainability, and that's something that to me is more than just corporate responsibility and environmental sustainability, but also just looking for partnerships that can last and that can endure. And that does, I think, when Randy talked about understanding our problem, at Black Diamond, our biggest problem was innovation. And how do we innovate and how do we create new things and put new products into the market? Oftentimes they start out at low volumes, and those are issues that we have. So I think that's one of the things that for us is important. Now on the sustainability front, for us it's very important. Blue Sign is important, you know, looking at, you know, different ways to make sure that we're responsible. For our industry, it's huge. So that's something that's also very important for us. And then I think the last thing that is becoming more and more important for us is helping to support our development process. You know, having our designers, having our in-house brand come with ideas and really turning those ideas into finished product. I think bridging that gap between having to come in with full patterns, full everything, and not having, I mean, being able to reduce our in-house overhead would be really helpful for us as well, and something we look for.
Bob, next.
Yeah, I may repeat some of the things that have been said, but like Walter said, it's always been about quality, delivery, price. I include in that service and execution. You can kind of use them interchangeably. And I've lived here in El Salvador for about 18 months, and that's as long as I've been with Puma. So my first day with Puma was my first day in El Salvador. And something that I'm constantly working towards is this customer focus. I use that internally. My customer is Puma North America, or Puma Mexico, or Puma Chile, or whoever we're exporting to. My customer, in kind of a strange twist, could be a factory, one of you that is asking us to clarify what it is we actually need, the brand direction, the material direction, the product direction. And I have obviously faced some challenge in getting people to really embrace that customer focus. Every time you pick up the phone, I think that, you know, there's call centers here in El Salvador. I think this is a very customer-focused culture and customer-focused region and relationship-focused region. But to take that and apply it to everything that we do in business, to understand, like Randy was saying, you know, don't say why you can't do it. That's the easy answer. That's kind of a cop-out. Let's work together and find a solution, because, again, like Randy's saying, if you solve your customer's problems, whoever your customer is, I don't think that it gets easier forever, but you immediately see an improvement in the communication, an improvement in the service, an improvement in the execution. And what I love when I go into factories is to see the enthusiasm that you as business owners have in owning your business and investing in your business and changing and improving. Colin and I were talking before we got started about differences around the world. And there are parts of the world where you can, say to do something and it's going to get done. It may not be right, but it'll get done. And there are some parts of the world where you got to negotiate a little bit more, and you may not be able to tell someone to do something. You got to kind of ask them, or maybe sell them. So I guess what I'm saying is I love that enthusiasm. I love that excitement in investment in change. Could be something as simple as, and I'm not a lean manufacturing guy, but in Mexico I saw, in fact, I was with our COO about a year ago, and he said it's one of the leanest factories that he's ever been in. And again, I'm admitting some of my non-Japanese leanness training here, but it's like the 3-peg system. He was so excited about that. At every workstation, there's 3 pegs. If there's any more than 3 garments stacked up, you're not doing your job, you're not doing. So little things like that. Again, the sustainability part, it's education, it's school, I was at a factory here on Monday, and it's one of the biggest investments that I've seen at any supplier here, basically doubling their footprint on their piece of land. But they're putting in a soccer field or a football pitch. And that keeps everybody a little bit competitive, a little bit happy. So again, sorry if I'm a little all over the place, but I would say that customer focus and that service mentality. I will easily admit that brands are far from perfect. Sometimes we don't know what we want. We say it's about like this, and if you show us that what we're trying to do is more achievable, this way. Change the pattern, flip the pattern, change the cut. So don't compromise the design, but you can change the design line without compromising the design. We are so open to your expertise. Will only make both of us better. So.
I'd like to reinforce that, actually. I think the insistence on quality and these kinds of measures, you have to understand in a world market, quality is no longer a competitive edge. It's an expectation. Every single thing you buy, whether it's an electronic component that you pay only $10 for, or a nice computer, you expect the same level of quality from it now. It has become the kind of ticket to entry into the right to do business in the world. So extremely high quality, it's just a given. Service levels, same thing. The fact that you have to be able to track everything and keep every single customer around the world can keep track of, I can buy a new iPhone now and track when it left the factory all the way to my front door. If you don't have that ability when you're tracking your manufacturing and keeping your customer up to date, it's just an expectation. What's happened is these expectations have become global. Yeah. And there's no consideration for a different country. And if you can't do what another customer can do, you're simply more difficult to work with, and it's harder to give you business. So these, and the other one, when we talk about service levels, is it includes something that we brought up a little bit, and that's like prototyping and quick sampling and having the ability to build a full product. In my world in materials, it's the ability to try things. I appeal to all of you, if you have a mill, to make sure somehow, some way, you build within your infrastructure an ability to try things. Most of what the big wins that I've experienced in my 40 years in this business, and especially in the last few years at Under Armour, were not huge planned innovation projects. They were opportunities where we sat down together with partners, took an idea for a need that we had to solve, and began comparing that to what might be possible with the technologies and yarns and processing, and came up with new wins. Those have been the biggest things, but they are the kind of project where you say, I think I want to try this new yarn, and you have a new yarn in 3 days, and you try it. And you think you might want to try a new fabric, and that fabric, no matter where it comes from in the world, is in the office a week later, and we're testing it. At that speed, that ability to do trials and to act quickly is the only way that you might latch on to one of these big winners and run with it. So I think service levels go way beyond just what we commonly think of service, and it's about how quick can you innovate, how quick can you try things on a global market.
Thank you. I could keep these guys up here all day long just asking questions, because I learn from every one of them. Everything that they say, I'm writing notes there like crazy. I hope it's useful to you as well. How much more time do we have? Do I need to shut it down? I need to shut it down? Or? Okay. I just want to, I had some other really interesting things. So next time, I want to reinforce something that they've all touched on a little bit, is that everyone is worried about the new trade regulations, and everyone is concerned about that. I have felt all along, and I think every one of them agree with me, that if you make your individual companies as competitive as it can be, and you do everything that these guys are talking about, where you collaborate with your customers, you understand their problems, you react quickly, you're going to be relatively independent of what's happening with regards to the trade regulations. So I would encourage you to learn from the people like this and to put into practice the things they're talking about. Thank you very much for your time today. We appreciate it. Well, if you will. Well, I didn't know whether we had. Okay, we get. Don't go away. They said we could take one or two questions from the people out here, which I love. I hope you have some that are just going to knock them dead. So,
Be nice.
Questions?
Okay, that's it.
Well, Laura, maybe there's none.
Si alguien tiene alguna pregunta, por favor levanta su mano y llevaremos el micrófono hacia su lugar. ¿No hay preguntas? Okay.
Thank you both.
I could ask them a question.
Bueno, agradecemos a los panelistas. Damos paso al panel número 2 de nuestra agenda, denominado Preparación para una mayor competencia en el mercado estadounidense, oportunidades y retos que plantea la entrada en vigor del TPP a la región del CAFTA. Invitamos a los panelistas a que nos acompañen al frente, el señor Bill Jasper, representante de Unify y NCTO, Jonathan Fee, de la firma consultora Alston & Bird, y Karin de León, representante de Secatec. Como moderadora tendremos a la licenciada Johanna Hill, consultora con más de 15 años de experiencia.